Good morning, everyone. I am doing a presentation today instead of a talking head video, just so we can stay on track. And for the people who listen to the replay, they can know which parts we're talking about and fast forward through the video accordingly. Because I want to make sure that as we're doing these master classes, that you guys get the most out of it. I know a lot of you did not get to listen to all of the interviews in time before they were taken down. And so hopefully this will help you to kind of fast forward through and get the parts that you need. Okay, so those are the logistics. Again, as a reminder, you are here inside of the Recover Resiliently Facebook group. You are watching the masterclass called How to Set Boundaries with Toxic People. And the first topic of discussion is really, how do we identify toxic people, right? Because this doesn't apply if you don't know what you're looking for in a toxic person. And you may be dealing with a toxic person in your environment and you don't even know it. And that's why some of you may be feeling frustrated. Like, hey, I'm talking to so-and-so and they're not listening, whether it's a child, a spouse, significant other, parent, and you just don't understand why. So let me just lay down some, default rules and on how to identify a toxic person. And I will be posting this list in the group as a separate post, just so you guys know. So I did some curating last night on the internet to just kind of make sure I got all of them. So these are the ones that kind of hit home for me, and I'm going to share these with you. Again, just a general overview of a toxic person, right? Toxic people are those people who just like suck the energy out of us. And so they are oozing all this negativity. They're super negative. You don't understand why you don't want to be around them. Kind of like Holly and I talked about on her interview last week, Friday, right? You just don't know, but something gives you the when you're around them. Okay, the lights are flickering. Interesting. Right, and so these people leave us feeling worse whenever we're around them. And, bottom line is your gut knows. Your gut knows who these people are. And if you're getting a hit like, I'm not sure, I think they probably are a toxic person. Like I explained in one of the live recaps, most of you, if you are dealing with a narcissistic person, you are probably highly empathic because a narcissist is attracted to your high level of empathy, because that means his needs are going to be met no matter what, even above yours, even above your children's. And again, I am not the narcissistic expert, but I have done my research on the topic. Okay. So these toxic people could also be described as narcissistic as well, or NPD, narcissistic personality disorder. You can look that up as well. Let me go through the list real quick. Okay. They are pathological liars. So you catch them in a lie like all the time. It's like, hey, I thought you said this and whatever. This is usually one of the first signs that actually hit you in the gut. And you're like, I wonder what's going on here. Right? Another one is they manipulate you in order to get what they want. So they kind of feel like a puppeteer, or you feel like your puppet strings are being pulled when you're around them. They they manipulate you with their emotions. And they just kind of string you along. Also, they take advantage of your kindness. And how this one works is like they tap into your, you have a deep sense of love and you have a deep sense of wanting to give. And this is kind of like a catch-22 where how they take advantage of your kindness is they know that you love giving and you get your ego stroked when you give. And so they kind of use that against you. And it's not that everyone who you give out to is a toxic person, but just it's kind of ties in with the one I just said, manipulates you, right? So they manipulate you to get what they want while taking advantage of your kindness. But you have to watch. If taking care of people strokes your ego, like how it did for me, people around you will use it to their advantage to get what they want. Just saying. Like, if your kids are like, Mommy, can I have this? Oh, you're like the best mom. Not to say that every time they do that, it means something, but just be careful if people are stroking your ego and your kindness, your propensity for kindness to get what they want, even if you told them no. Okay. Next one, they put you down, even if it's like in a joking manner, and they discourage you from pursuing your goals. I'm going to run through the rest of these because we're already 7 minutes in. I have a lot to cover. Don't consider other people's feelings or needs, including yours. Are frequently angry or aggressive. Like, I don't think you need any more explanation, but someone had reached out and kind of said they're walking on eggshells. Someone in this group said they're walking on eggshells around their husband, and that's a sign. Okay. Rarely, next one, they rarely apologize, or they always expect you to apologize, even if it's not your fault. And one way you know that this is happening is if the word sorry is frequent in your vocabulary around this person. I was like, oh, sorry. I know we as women say sorry a lot. We're always apologizing for everything. We sneeze and we go, oh, I'm so sorry. Especially now with the whole coronavirus and everyone is germaphobe. Well, I was a germaphobe even before the coronavirus came out. I just had to be because I had an autoimmune weakened immune system. So I just watch myself. But yeah, when you say sorry a lot, it's kind of like apologizing for being who you are, or even sometimes even existing. Like, oh, I'm so sorry, I'm breathing in your space. I see a lot of women who are in toxic relationships do this. I did it too. Hi, Leonie. Thanks for joining. Okay. The next one. So these are toxic people, right? They blame others and don't take responsibility for their actions. Okay, so these last 5, I highlighted because these are some things that we can do ourselves as we are in a relationship and there's this whole push and pull going on. Thank you, Leonie. So these are like, yes, watch what other people are doing, but also watch if you are doing it yourself, right? You blame others and don't take responsibility for your actions. And this is also true, right? Your spouse or partner could be just blaming everybody and never take responsibility for their actions. And these people drain your energy. I call them energy vampires because they kind of just suck the life right out of you. These people also have a lot of, quote, drama or problems, but they don't want to change, right? The definition of insanity is keep doing the same thing, expecting a different result or outcome, right? There's drama going on in your life. Something has to give, and it's not going to be him, just saying. Okay, and second to last, they think the rules don't apply to them. And this also can be reversed on us when we're stuck in victim mode. Like, yes, he needs to change, this needs to happen, but yet I don't need to change. So I'm saying it's not, but we have to watch where we are and what we're doing and making sure that we don't become a toxic person ourselves, okay? Also talk, but don't listen. Now, I know I'm doing all the talking. I know I am. But I do listen as well. So people tell me I'm a great listener. If you were lucky enough to grab one of the free sessions, I'll be reaching out to you guys today. You'll know that I listen and I hear. And that's how I analyze and I troubleshoot people's where people are and their solutions that they need right now for them. And that's how I create strategy, is I'm just a great listener. Okay. So those are how we identify a toxic person. Okay. So next, we are going to talk about how to establish boundaries. Yes, Naomi, thank you so much for pointing that out. Yeah, we have to watch so we don't flip into our dark side. Okay, this is the part that you guys came for, how to establish boundaries if there's none already in place. And if you feel like you're getting pushed and pulled around, you probably don't have any boundaries, or they're not completely and fully established. So number one, how to establish your boundaries, be clear on what you need before trying to communicate or enforce the boundary, right? So an example is this, like when I was working the night shift, I had to explain to my kids that I need a certain amount of time to sleep, right? Like, mom said everything, like I would like prep food so that they weren't starving or whatever, right? It's like, here's food in the fridge, take it out, eat it if you're hungry, but mom needs to sleep at least until 10 a.m., whatever. I mean, they, not like they didn't understand, but like over the years, I had to explain it to them, right? Or even now when I'm working, like when the office door is closed, it means I'm working, like don't bother me, but you know, there's certain boundaries, like how am I going to build my business? Like right now, my door is closed. No one's actually home, but the door is closed because that, for me, signifies the boundary that I'm in my office. This is my work time. And, right, we need to be clear in communicating why and what the boundary is. Okay. So, right, when we communicate our boundaries or expectations, we need to do it clearly, calmly, and consistently. So a lot of times it's like, oh, this is the, you know, when we're starting something new, I'm victim to it too, but right, it's like, I'll set a boundary and then I'm like, okay, this is the boundary. Cool. I explain it that one time. And then when people persistently try to step on my boundaries, we're going to be talking about maintaining next slide. But, you know, if we're become defensive about people trampling over our boundaries, you know, when we step into anger, it's kind of like it defeats the purpose. We have to remain calm, instead of being defensive when people try to step on our boundaries. Okay. So an example is, like, say you're out drinking and you don't want to get in the car with someone who's been drinking as well. It's like, you know what? I'm calling a cab. I'm not going to get in the car with you when you've been drinking. And this, my ex-husband was an alcoholic. So I'm like, he would insist on driving sometimes, and I'd be like, oh my God, like, you're so wasted. There's this one time where, we were both drinking and we got pulled over because I was barfing out the window. Like, I didn't even know I was barfing out the window. That's how drunk I was. Yeah, I didn't get out much, and the kids were with my parents, and I was like, yeah. And, I was drinking with my work guy friends. And so I didn't even know how much I couldn't handle at that time. I was just like, yeah, I was just trying to keep up with the boys at that point. But we got pulled over. It was kind of crazy. So instead of me like fighting and be like, hey, I don't want to jump in the car with you, like, don't you know you're drunk right now? Right? We have to remain calm in order for people to respect our boundaries. Because if we're behaving like a lunatic, you automatically lose respect. Same thing, like if your boss is trying to tell you to do something and then he's over there ranting and raving like a lunatic, you automatically lose credibility for him, right? Okay, so that is that. And then if your boundaries aren't respected, right, you need to evaluate all of your options and take action in one way or the other. Because, right, if you're using the drunk driver analogy, you still got to get home. But if they're not respecting your boundary of not driving, now today we have Uber, thank God, but what are your options? And you have to take action. You can't sit there in victimhood and be like, oh my God, my husband, he's drunk and he wants to just da-da-da-da-da-da. I mean, like, listing all of that, it does no good to sit in that and just complain and be the victim in that. You got to take action, especially if you have children. Children, like, I'm a big advocate for preventing damaged children in the process of these toxic relationships, right? I've already shared with you guys that my son was subject to a lot of like secondhand abuse. It's kind of like secondhand smoke. He is a subject to firsthand abuse, but also secondhand abuse. Seeing me get abused, it was like a double whammy for him. So make sure your kids are not seeing you being subject to this, okay? So now we're going to move on to how to maintain boundaries. Okay, so this is the long one. This is the long part. So it's probably going to take up the whole rest of the hour, or at least 30 more minutes. Okay. So maintaining your boundaries. Okay, there's this thing called boundary erosion. I heard it in a time management seminar, and he was talking about boundary erosion. So it's like you have your calendar and you map stuff out, especially if you work from home or you're an entrepreneur, right? You map stuff out, but yet it's like, oh, well, I'm in the zone, I'm going to keep working. So you keep working. I like to use that analogy because in life, with people, it's harder to see the boundary erosion, but it's easier to see it, and as example that you do it to yourself, right? So just look at where your boundaries are slipping, right? Like erosion is when the soil washes away, or like the analogy that I want to use is you're climbing up a bank, and then you're desperately trying to get up the bank and over the bank, and you keep slipping because like all of this erosion is happening and you can't get to where you need to go. Okay. So that's a description of what boundary erosion looks like. And so when you are trying to maintain your boundaries and looking at boundary erosion, first off, you have to look at and see, is this boundary negotiable? Right? Some boundaries are negotiable. It's like even like activities in your calendar are negotiable. You've probably heard a lot of people talk about non-negotiables. And so non-negotiable is like drop dead. Like if you're a mom and you have kids at school, a non-negotiable is you have to take them to school, right? And if you have like a no smoking policy, when I was in high school, I had a no smoking policy in my relationship. I was like, I'm not dating you if you're gonna do drugs, smoke weed or smoke cigarettes. So I had a no smoking policy in my relationship, and he kept like not maintaining the boundary. Not that I know smoking now. I realize that smoking is and drugs are an addiction. But I was like, I don't like it. So if you're gonna keep doing it, I'm out. So that is an example of a non-negotiable. Or if yours is drinking, or a good one to have, if you don't have it already, is a no hitting policy, right? Don't let him hit you is a good one to have. Just saying. A no adultery boundary, and like you have to really set your definition of what adultery actually is. Like, does adultery mean like actually like having sex with someone? Does it mean kissing? Does it mean emotional adultery, like just having an online relationship and saying I never kissed her, but yet there's this emotional entanglement that he has, right? So you have to establish your ground rules for what you're like, define your boundary. Okay. So going back to negotiable boundaries, compromise is a good thing, right? Everyone talks about compromise in relationship. However, true compromise is not abandoning your needs to please someone else, right? Or accepting treatment that you consider a deal breaker, right? Like the smoking thing, the hitting thing, deal breaker. Okay, and if someone repeatedly violates your most important non-negotiable boundaries, you have to ask yourself, seriously, how long you're going to be willing to accept it. Someone also reached out to me and said, their boundaries are getting violated like a lot, and they're walking on eggshells, and they're like, I'm just trying to maintain until the kids get older, and just try to live it out, even though like every day it's a struggle. And, you really have to decide, like, I'm not a therapist. Okay, so here's the disclaimer. These are just ideas. This is not medical advice. This is not mental health advice. If you need mental health advice, you guys have to find a therapist. I just found one here that does teleconferencing here in California, that she lives like walking distance or maybe jogging distance from where I live. And she deals with a lot of victims of crime. And so she's familiar with domestic violence, sexual assault of minors, like all those kinds of victims of crime. And if you live in California, there is a type of insurance that pays for your therapy if you are a victim of crime. And if you want information on that, like either send me a direct message or leave a comment here. But yeah, we don't have to be friends for you to leave me a direct message if you're in the group. Okay. Yeah, so just how long are you going to accept being mistreated? There are a lot of people who accept disrespect and abuse for years and years, like I had, and, hoping that the toxic person will change, only to look back in hindsight. And then you see that this person, husband, parents are hard, okay? Parents are hard, or blood relatives are hard. Even if you've been sexually abused by a family member, that is hard. We're going to talk about detachment towards the end, but yeah. And, you just got to look back and see that this person honestly has no intention and never had any intention of changing or respecting your boundaries. Like you keep, someone asked me, what is the difference between hope and toxic hope? And I'd never heard of the term toxic hope. And I looked it up. And this is an example of toxic hope. You're hoping that this toxic person will change. In the meantime, staying and being exposed to the abuse. No, that's not good. Okay. You know what? I cannot see comments. If people are commenting, I feel like you guys are. Oops. Okay, maybe not. Okay. That is all we have for boundary erosion. Next up. So how to deal with people who are always stepping over your boundary, right? You need to record these boundary violations and your responses to them. Okay. So it's like you just journal. And this is why I advocate for journaling nightly in the morning. I prefer journaling twice a day because in the morning it's like, hey, this is what I have planned today. And when you journal at night in the same book, you can like, oh, this is what my expectations were. This is where I kind of slipped. And oh, okay, so tomorrow be aware of where I could be slipping. So that's just how I like to run my journaling. This allows for you to check for weak spots. If you were able to download the matrix, right? So this is part of that that whole how to use the matrix, right? Or why the matrix was created for industries that I used to work in, right? Industries that have a lot of safety issues and stuff, right? You got to check for weak spots. And you know what, if you are a Christian, just know like the enemy is prowling around looking for people whom he can devour. That's what the Bible verse says. So even like the toxic person, like, oh, she set a boundary here. Oh, but where's the hole in the fence that I can still get to her? All right, so you have to maintain your perimeter. I'm sorry, I was in the military, so sometimes I use military examples, sometimes I use refinery examples. I know not a lot of people have or are familiar with those, but just bear with me. Where you have to make sure your perimeter is secure, right? Because you've watched movies, war movies, the enemy will come and they will find the weak link in your fence, and they're just going to slip right through. And in the refinery, like we have, because it's safety, and there's all these terrorists and stuff. We have perimeter cameras. We have barbed wire fencing to keep people out. Someone cut a hole through the fence. We don't. I mean, it's not that legit where we had like fence monitoring to, but someone cut a hole through the fence and they were just walking around the refinery, and it's like, whoa, and there were homeless people living like outside the fence. This was the border near the ocean. Okay, thanks, Leonie. I'll see you soon. They cut a hole in the fence because they wanted access to our supplies, because they're homeless and they're living on the beach right outside the fence. So, this is not for you to just give up and say, well, man, establishing my perimeter, setting up boundaries is hard. Not gonna lie, it is really hard, but it just takes consistency. And when you see you slip up, you're just like, okay, I'm just gonna do better the next day. Just like if you're on a diet or you're exercising, it's like, okay, I didn't exercise today. I ate candy today. Just shore it up and then move on. Tomorrow's a new day, can start over. But the more you flex that boundary muscle, the more it's going to be built. If you give up before the muscle forms, like if you do push-ups and you're like, oh my God, this hurt, and then the next day it's going to hurt, right? Let me use this muscle analogy because I think it's important, right? You work out. First day, you don't really feel anything, right? You get into your workout, you're like, yeah, you jam in. And then the next day, what happens, right? Lactic acid buildup, pain in your muscles, like, oh my gosh, I'm in such pain. And then you're like, I don't want to do it. You have to push through the resistance, right? You have to exercise your muscles to get the lactic acid out. And so you have to push through the pain, and then eventually, your body will have like a less lactic acid buildup because you're exercising regularly. Same thing with boundaries. The more you exercise your boundaries regularly, the less it will hurt. And people around you will be, they'll respect you for it. Okay, that leads us to the next one. Accept that some people will never respect your boundaries, no matter what you do, right? So this one is important because sometimes we keep trying to convince someone that, hey, you need to maintain my boundary. Hey, you need to maintain my boundary, right? This is for people who you keep in your sphere, right? Or people who you have to keep in. Well, every person is negotiable. I mean, children, parents, spouse, they should obtain permission to be in your life. Just because they're related doesn't give them any more help, or not help, any more access to you. You know what I mean? So stop trying to convince them to respect your boundaries. Yes, you're going to be disappointed over and over again if you keep doing that, right? And like I said before, the definition of insanity is keep doing the same thing over and over again, hoping for a different outcome. I told you this boundary. I told you this boundary. I told you this. Don't do this. Don't do this. Don't do this. Right? You keep saying your boundary, saying your expectation, expecting a different result, and they keep stepping over it. What are you going to do? We're going to go over that in a second. Right. So this is the part where you need to understand that you cannot change someone else's behavior. You have two choices. You can choose to accept it, Like, okay, this dude is just gonna keep stepping over this boundary. He's gonna keep smoking, right? Using my example earlier. He's gonna keep smoking. Oh hell, might as well just let him keep smoking because he's gonna keep doing it anyway, right? So that's acceptance. Or this next one, you can choose to disengage. You can choose to detach. Okay. How to practice loving detachment, right? I know some who responded to the survey selected answer number A for one of the questions. I don't get my way until I get angry, right? So sometimes we feel like nobody's listening to us. Like, I keep saying this, nobody's listening, nobody cares. But when I get angry, oh, everyone like stops and listens to me. So therefore, I must use anger to establish my boundaries. So this is a different way of how to maintain your boundaries with people around you or toxic people around you without having your emotions yo-yo all around, right? You have to detach. If you're swinging all over the place, you have to detach. So detachment is one, leaving the situation, but it also means shifting away from trying to control people and situations, right? If you keep engaging with people who are like, just keep overstepping your boundaries, no respect for you, none at all. And you keep trying to, it's like you're going back and forth. You know, I'm using he as an example just for an example. As a husband, right? He keeps stepping over your boundaries. You're like, no, you're going to listen to me. No, I'm not. I'm going to step over your boundaries again. No, you're going to maintain my boundaries. And you keep just fighting back and forth. This is, I already told you I'm blunt. This is your way of trying to establish control over him, over your husband, over your children, over your parents, over the situation. So detachment is releasing control over the situation. And I know why a lot of us do it, right? When we are in a state of fear, it's understandable that we want to control everything as a form of protection, right? It's like, oh, if I have control over this situation, therefore I am safe. I'm going to say that again. People who are perfectionists and are control freaks establish control or try to control everything because they fear, it's out of fear, and they want to feel safe. Okay, so just understand this part, right? But you already know, trying to control people never works, right? So when we detach, we stop trying to change others and stop trying to force the outcome that we want, right? Because it's like, if you are still married to a toxic person, you're like, well, I stayed married to my second husband way longer than I should have. And for me, it was, I had the fear of being a 2-time divorcee. It's like, I don't want to be divorced. And so I'm like, oh, let's just keep trying. Let's just keep trying to work this relationship. Like, maybe he'll change. Like, I kept trying to change the situation instead of just understanding the fact that he's toxic. I need to get away. And I know, I want to say a lot of you in this group, especially if you came over from Stacy Leslie Vernick, or Natalie Hoffman's camp. They're great people, and they give you great tips on how to deal with your toxic relationship. But it's like, how, sometimes you just gotta detach, So these are coming up is 6 ways to detach from a narcissistic or toxic person. 1, physically leave the situation, especially if it's dangerous or even if it's just uncomfortable. It's like, hey, this is not comfortable for me. I have to walk away. Or like if it's a phone conversation, thank you. This is uncomfortable for me, or I don't want to receive your negativity right now, and I'm going to hang up the phone, right? You don't have to just be like, rah, 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 yell at them and hang up the phone. You can, like we said earlier, state your boundary, state why you're leaving the conversation, why you're leaving the house, the event, wherever you are, why you're choosing to walk away. Because you probably already know that this is true. When we fight anger with anger, it's like, oh, then it justifies them for being the a-hole, right? Because you're being an a-hole to them. Like, oh, well, she yelled at me, and da-da-da. And it just justifies their position and maintaining their a-holeness. I don't know. That's not a word, but being a jerk. It justifies them being a jerk because you're being a jerk back to them. They were just, quote, defending themselves, okay? So don't do that, right? And number 2, responding in a different way. I'm always ahead of myself. Oh, not just in this training, but even in corporate. Like, I knew the content, and so I just keep talking, and I'm like, oh, there's my slide. I'm like, I'm way ahead. It's not even on this slide. We're on another slide already. Anyway, number 2, respond in a different way. Right? Instead of taking something personally or yelling, you can just shrug off the rude comment, or you can make a joke of it. Just do something that's out of character, because it changes the dynamics of the interaction, right? If they're always expecting you to show up as this person, or like always demure, always like, okay, yes, whatever you say, and if you're like, no, yes, initially there's going to be some friction, but when you come at it, right, this goes back to the body language stuff with Holly, pacing and leading, matching, mirroring. When you change how you interact with someone, they're going to be in shock and they're going to stop. Oh, she's different. And, in that split second, they might come back, these narcissist, toxic people, they're quick to recover. They're manipulative. They are very smart. But you have like that split second, you're like, oh, catch them off guard. That changes the whole dynamic of your situation. Okay, number 3, obvious one, declining invitations to spend time with them. So obviously this applies to people outside of your household, but if this also applies if they are in your household and they want to engage with you, right? Just no, I decline. I do not want to argue with you right now. Like if they are in an argumentative mood and they, sometimes people just want to argue for the sake of releasing pent-up anger. And they could be angry at themselves. They want to take the anger out on someone else. Therefore, they engage in this negativity battle with you, right? Just disengage. Like, hey, I declined your invitation to argue right now. I declined your invitation to go to lunch with you. Especially like, oh, I don't want to go to lunch with that lady. All she does is complain. Like, oh, I don't want to be sucked into her energy vampire vortex. Just say no. Yeah, who cares if she thinks you're rude? It's fine. You don't like her anyway. So what's the point? Like, unless you want to keep hanging out with her, then, but why not just cut it off? Okay. Number 4, let them make their own decisions and deal with the consequences of those choices. So this is when someone's trying to wrap you up in make you be the fall guy for their bad decisions, right? You may have someone in here. I think someone also wrote back to me about this particular topic, saying that whatever decision she makes, her husband blames her. Like, whatever, you know? So if you are dealing with someone like this, like, oh, even if it's your child, oh, mom, what should I do? Or wife, what should I do? And you know, every time you give them advice and it doesn't work, they throw it back in your face. Just stop giving advice. And again, explain when, like, oh, what do you think? It's like, hey, and this is why writing down the examples is important. Remember last time I told you to do this, it didn't work out. You blamed me for the negative outcome, whatever it was. You blamed me for helping you make the decision and it didn't go the way you wanted it. So why not just stop all of that and, you know, figure it out yourself? Of course, it's not going to go over well, but the more, it's like a muscle, the more you keep doing it, the more they're going to know that, or a good way. So this is a good way to deflect if people are trying to get you into these conversations about what to do, and then they blame you for it. It's like, oh, I don't know. What do you think you should do? You know, and sometimes people just need to verbally process things, right? So ask them, what do you think you should do? And instead of giving advice, and this is also for leadership too, if your people at work are coming to you and then you make a decision and it's like, oh, it didn't work, blah, 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 right? Just, well, what would you do? Okay. And then they say why, what they would do. Then you ask them, okay, why do you think that's the way we should go with this? And then they're going to have to explain and talk it out and come up with a solution themselves. So what and why? When people try to rope you into helping them make decisions and they always blame you for it at the end. Number 5, stop giving unsolicited advice. So it ties in with number 4, right? And this is also for children, like, especially if you have like estranged children or children who are battling with, just dark stuff, like say drug addiction or like hanging out with the wrong friends, just making bad decisions, not going to school, whatever. Just stop giving unsolicited advice. So this is similar but different to the first one. This is like say, you see, like for me, I see my son going outside and I look out the window. I'm like, oh, he's hanging out with those friends, the friends that I told him not to hang out with, who always lead him down the wrong path. Oh, okay. Like I could be all up in his grill and be like, hey, don't do this, don't do that, da, 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 da. And then you just keep engaging. Like I did that for a long time. We even went through like family counseling. It was just very bad because I kept trying to control the situation. Finally, I had to just let go and let him deal with a negative consequence. This started for him when he was young, like elementary school, not turning in his homework. Teachers were contacting me and I was taking on the blame as a parent. Teachers couldn't get to the kid. Then they try to blame game it on me. It's like, hey, mom, you're not doing your job. Oh, and then I kept taking responsibility for, my son's failures in school. Till at one point I said, I told the teacher, I said, I can't do anything more. We do the homework. I put it in his folder. I sent him to school. What else am I supposed to do? Like walk him to the class and grab it from his backpack and give it to you? At that point, I realized, look, something's going on. So I let him take the negative consequences of that, whether it was detention, extra work, poor grades. I just let him feel the negative consequences of his behavior. Because until somebody feels the negative consequence, they're not going to do anything about it. And then number 6, choosing not to participate in the same old arguments. And just goes back to number 4, right? We're not going to just keep going around the same mountain. Eventually something has to give or change. So again, let me reiterate, detaching doesn't mean that you don't care about this person. It just means you're taking care of yourself and being realistic about what you can do in each situation, right? So if you need help, go back and watch this. I think I started this at the 20-minute mark, this section anyway. Also, for those that you can, the people that don't live with you, considering limited contact or going like no contact, like just cutting people out of your lives. Sometimes the only way you can really protect yourself is to stop associating with toxic people who don't respect you, right? It's not intended to punish or manipulate the other person. Like if you're cutting somebody off because it's like, oh yeah, well this applies to like married people and withholding sex. I'm just going to use that as an example. Oh yeah, you want sex from me? I'm just not going to give it to you. And it's not a way to punish him or manipulate him for doing something bad. It's not a tit for tat kind of thing, right? This is actually a form of self-care. It's like, hey, I'm setting a boundary because I need to cut myself off. I need a space. I need to create a sanctuary for myself. So just think of it, I am creating a sanctuary as a form of self-care by putting these people outside of your boundary. And again, if someone is hurting you physically or emotionally, mentally, basically if you're a victim of domestic violence, go back and listen to Stacy's stuff or sign up for the Emotional Abuse Summit and you'll hear all of that stuff. You should put a distance between yourself and the person who's hurting you. Easier said than done, but a lot of times women don't even consider it as an option, or they consider it when it's too late. Like I considered it way too late. And it wasn't only about me being hurt, it was about my children being exposed to this toxicity. And I know a lot of you who are stuck in a toxic relationship have probably endured a toxic relationship as a child. And so there's like this familiarity and you're like, And for me, I was a victim of divorce as a child, right? My parents got divorced. I didn't like it. I didn't want my kids to have to go through divorce because I knew it sucked. And so I held on longer than I wanted to. And my kids told me in the end, like, Mom, I wish you left sooner. So this is why I'm doing this. Is it might be too late for you, but it's not too late for your child. Like, consider your child. Use your mama bear mojo. You will do anything for your kids. Do this for them. Leave for them. So that's my PSA of the day. Because again, family and friends should lift you up, support you, not leave you feeling depressed, anxious, angry, or confused, right? Some of you have told me you are right now in a state of depression because of all of the oppression that is around you. You have to get a therapist. You have to talk to someone. If you feel like you're clinically depressed, or even if you're suffering from apathy, right? How Linda and I talked about, you need to go get professional help. And I am building up some resources for you. So I'm glad I have Lisa now, and then we have Leonie. If any of the speakers, they are here to help you and support you. So these are also some things to do, just wrapping it up. Let's say you're not ready to go like cold turkey on no contact. So 4 steps. Identify your choices. So you can be in a relationship but yet detached, like in the environment but detached, right? So detaching physically and emotionally, limiting contact, like just limiting it, not saying like none at all, but just like, hey, I can't right now, and yeah. So that's the difference between none and limited. And just avoid being alone with the person, right? If you have to be with the person, be with them around other people, like family parties. Yeah, like if it's your parent or whatever, you can be in a family environment. And because most of the time, these toxic people pick on you when you're alone, right? It's all about their ego and establishing dominance. So just try not to be alone with that person as much as possible. Number 2, choose the best option. Right, so identify your choices. Like, what choices do you actually have in dealing with this person? Choose the best option. 3, respect yourself. And I know it's hard when you're just down and out, but if there's one thing that you can do, is just continue to believe in yourself and have hope in yourself. I think that answers the question. Toxic hope versus just regular hope is having hope and belief in yourself and in God, and in your children. Like, that's what got me out of my suicide, is I had hope in my children's future. Number 4, trust your instincts. I cannot stress this part enough. Trust your instincts. People who are asking me for advice on what they should do in their relationships, a number of you have responded to me either through direct message or through email. What should I do? I think that this is happening. I think I'm depressed. Trust your gut. You already know you're in a toxic relationship. Like, you don't have to ask me, is my spouse a narcissist? If you're asking the question, he probably is. Because narcissism is a spectrum, right? There's narcissistic personality disorder, where it's diagnosed and it's in the DSM. It's in the book. It's an actual like sickness. Or they're just partly narcissistic, right? Self-serving, only thinks about themselves, hurts other people for their own interest. I mean, you already know what's happening. So that is that. Before we leave, I don't see anyone on here, but because I can't see any comments. If you have any questions, let me know, and post them in this thread if you want to. I want to keep everything in this thread as it pertains to setting boundaries with toxic people, because I like things clean. You'll learn more about how I set up my life and keep everything clean, as far as scheduling goes and tasks and all of that, on Thursday when we talk about procrastination. Let's see. So some resources I want to leave you with. 1, go register for Stacy Brookman's Emotional Abuse Summit. Right? The link is in the tab on the interviews page. The interviews have been taken down, but you still get access to all these Facebook group recap videos and access to these people's freebies. So go ahead, grab those freebies. I mean, each guest was asked to provide a freebie during the summit period. It's up to the individual practitioner on how long these freebies are going to last, right? So register for Stacy Brookman's summit. Part of her summit is a lady called Leslie Vernick. I know some of you are in her group already. So Leslie Vernick was a guest on Stacy Brookman's summit. She talks a lot about relationships and how to deal with that aspect. You can go follow her online as well. There's also a book. A lot of times when we have problems setting boundaries, it's because we have codependency operating in our lives. So there's this book that my therapist had me read when I was going through my divorce. It's called Codependent No More. Talks about the symptoms of codependency. And I didn't even understand. I thought I was this strong woman who knew what I wanted, was assertive, and all this stuff. But yet, this codependency was happening. Yeah, and it's a very good read, especially for going deeper into learning how to set boundaries in a toxic relationship. Okay, so we've been going for an hour, and I want to thank everyone for watching and being part of the group. And if you have any questions, again, pop them below here. And I will be reaching out to those who have won the free session for submitting their survey answers. And I'll be reaching out to you guys today and setting up those sessions with you. So thank you for joining. I'll see you again on Thursday at 9 a.m. Pacific. Okay, thanks. Bye. Look, I'm waving at the camera. You guys can't even see me. Okay, bye.